like 0 degrees. I'm out the cage, gotta let out the beast. Revolutionary, gotta let out the streets. Locked in the cage, I'ma let out the hood, out the hood, out the wake up, get out the sheets. We came for one man, forget my peace. You take the west side, take on the east.
Okay, so, hello, we are here to talk about Leading Man, and I want to get into that in just a second. But first of all, introduce yourselves. Tell me and everybody else who you are.
I'm Whitney Hauser. I'm the writer and co-director of Leading Man, along with...
I'm Amanda Michaels, yeah. And we directed it together, and I also produced the movie. Of course, Whitney also produced it.
Yeah, co-producer team.
Both shoulders. Yeah, you look much better. Okay, 1, 2. I think we should try that again. Smile this time. Okay. We can get this, yeah? How about you just think of something that makes you really happy? Okay, last one, and then we're gonna move on, okay?
Okay.
You got this. Last try. All right, thank you. Next.
First of all, absolutely incredible. Loved it. So moving.
Thank you.
Where did it come from?
Basically, it's loosely based on how I felt as a young person. I didn't realize what I was dealing with at a young age until much later, but I wanted to highlight sort of how held back I felt because of my difficult in expressing myself. I think there was a lot of pressures on being a girl or a woman, and the second I hit puberty, I didn't want to put on dresses. I also didn't want to date boys. I mean, that was another thing. But I really wanted to act. I was a very theatrical kid. I put on sketch shows. I wrote a ton. I had a little camera. And the second I hit 12 and 13, I just caved in on myself because I had no idea how to pursue that comfortably, because I wasn't going to be in a dress on stage. I wasn't going to play those female roles. I wasn't going to do that. So it really held me back in a lot of different ways, especially in my 20s. And it wasn't until my 30s I got into the industry. So I avoided the thing I loved most of my life because I wasn't comfortable with who I was. And so the story is highlighting the difficulties of a young person who really is struggling to accept that part of themselves and finding how they fit in to their dream, essentially.
Those moments where, the main character Ash is outside, the kind of plays are going on inside the rehearsals. Yeah. How much of that was real? Did that actually happen? You know the lines. You're like, I'm going to get there.
So I knew the lines to a lot of films. I was obsessed with movies and films when I was younger. I did go to a bunch of school plays, wishing that I had the kind of confidence to be on stage. But I stayed in my lane of sports, which, looking back, it's fine, but that's where I was more comfortable. I was more comfortable in the sports and playing basketball and just, so that wasn't the most accurate. I wasn't sitting outside. So that's why I say the movie's loosely based on me. I wasn't sitting outside, I just wanted to show somebody who just wanted to be there so badly that just being near it, being as close as possible to it, without being seen and kind of hiding and observing. And I just found one part of the movie that is accurate is, that did actually happen a few times, was the hair coming down, being forced to put down my hair in photo sessions as a kid that caused me massive anxiety. And so I really felt like that was an important moment to tell.
It's a really powerful moment, I think, in it as well, because it's kind of like up until that point, it feels like when people are suggesting more feminine things, they're trying to be helpful. But in that moment, you realise, actually,
right,
it's not. And some people take it far too far.
Right. It's well-meaning. That's right? She thought she was doing what I needed. Yeah. And so I wanted to sort of show that subtle exchange that I think young girls go through.
When you are also, on this project as well, someone else's life, how difficult or how much pressure is it to go, I have to get this right, I really want to get it right?
I think what came through for me is that I love Whitney. We've been friends for over 20 years. We met when we were teenagers, so when Whitney called and asked me if I wanted to come onto the project, it was a big yes, even though I never thought of doing something like this before. And it wasn't as much about like, I want to get it right as like every step of the journey, I wanted it to feel like it felt to be Whitney's friend through Whitney finding their way through the journey in their real life. So we had all these little litmus tests all the way through production where it was like, is that what it would really feel like? Is that what it actually felt like? And I remember when we were young, I think we were in our 20s, and sometimes Whitney would go in the dressing room.
This is a good story.
We'd go shopping. And Whitney didn't want to shop in the boys' department because that felt out of alignment with what Whitney was trying to do, which was trying to be a person in this world with the expectations of gender in this world. And Whitney would go in and I would quickly run and grab some things from the boys' department and put them over. And Whitney would be like, where'd this come from?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, don't worry about it. Just see if you like it,
Yeah.
you know? And then they would really like it. And that was like the beginning. And that's been 20 years of friendship. So it's been a really long road. But it's been like, this has been a real journey. Yeah. So it wasn't even like, we didn't have to try to make it true. It just had to feel resonant in each moment. And as it felt resonant, then we knew we were making something that would then hopefully resonate with the audience. And that's what's happening. That's what the cool thing is, that people who understand the story from within because they have a touch point that's similar, they understand it. But then there's people who have no touch points that are like relatable to this film, but they're feeling it. And I think it's just because we were trying to tell a true story more than anything. Even if every moment wasn't true, it didn't truly happen, the emotion is true.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you have any hesitation about kind of putting your own life in a project? Like, how much did you kind of have to battle with yourself? Or did you think, actually, my story can help other people and then it's worth it?
That's a really good question. I think I didn't know, especially in post, whether or not the story was going to come through. I didn't know if that moment with the photographer was going to be relatable. I didn't know if people, because I didn't want anything to be heavy-handed. I didn't want to hit anybody over the head. I just wanted to be so subtle that the people who kind of like understand it were connecting. So I questioned that a few times. I was like, are people even going to get what's going on? Like, you know, but I don't know. I think also, and this was a conversation we had too, I thought that this story was coming too late because I feel like media and film have made such interesting strides and big strides with trans and non-binary representation. However, I have not seen yet, other than maybe Tomboy. There's a movie, Tomboy, that came out in 2011 that's very good, about a young person who's realizing they're trans and kind of just, anyway. But in general, I haven't seen a young person really struggle with realizing it, trying to find how to fit in a very subtle sort of way, and having, so I think maybe that was, I don't know that was sort of my intention, was to show that side of that story.
We also didn't set out to make exactly like a story about gender dysphoria. And in fact, when we talk about the story and all through production, we talked about this story about this girl and her dream and her dad and then her teacher. And even when we talk about it now, sometimes people are like, what's the movie about? And my answer first is like, it's about a 15-year-old girl who has a dream and she's being held back from within and she doesn't actually know why she's being held back. But somehow through the support of a really loving father and a teacher who offers her a bridge, she figures it out, and then she has to make an important choice for herself. But like, it's almost, it's in there, it's interwoven, but it isn't the like leading edge of the movie. And that's because not the leading edge of a human, you know? Like, I've known Whitney for 20 plus years, and that's not Whitney's leading edge. It might be what some people notice first, but boy, that's just not all of who Whitney is, nor is that all of who any of us are, you know? So I don't know, that to me made it easier to tell the story, because I think sometimes if you're wrapping up a message that you hope will land and like hope might change hearts and minds, it feels like a lot of pressure, you know what I mean? But if you're telling a human being's story and it's multifaceted and has a lot of layers, then not so scary, as long as it's true, you know, as long as the heart of it is true. I was never afraid during production, by the way, that it wasn't coming through. I think you were more concerned about that because it is yours, you know? But I have a little bit of like a witness consciousness here. And so there were so many moments on set where I was like, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it was just like, I think anybody who produces or directs something, it's like you have this thing on the page that works. And then you're like, well, we'll see. what we end up doing. Yeah, you know. So,
and it is the first film, so like,
yeah, it's our first together. Yeah.
who knew?
The other characters, you mentioned the other characters, so beautifully done. The role of the father who's lost his wife and is kind of also in a place where he's having to deal with those things. How much of that is inspired by your own story, or did you pick a character who was going through something as well?
Yeah, that's really it. So this is actually a conversation with some of my friends because my mom. So again, my mom is still alive. My parents are, you know, so that part is not similar. But what I loved about the father story, because one of the things I really hated growing up was this kind of, well, you grew up with two brothers. I have two brothers. I have a dad. And, you know, well, you never had a sister, or I don't know. This is the reason why you're masculine presenting or want to be boys, because you just never had exposure. Mind you, my mom was extremely feminine and, you know, but like, put that aside. I just wanted to put the pressure on him and the battle that I think parents have, because I think it's a big topic right now with trans kids and youth. And I think it was also a message for the parents. It's like, I could have just focused on Ashlyn the whole time, but I think parents do need guidance around this topic. So they need to know it's not as scary as they think it is. Especially even if you have a kid who wants to dress like this way one day and this way the next at the age of 13, 14, just let them. What's the worst that can happen? It's all fear, you know, parents are driven by fear. And so I was trying to take some of that out, that fear out if a parent were to watch this and be like, it's really just easy. You can just hand your kid, you know, and say, go play the part that you want to play.
Well, I think these fit. Can I get them?
Only if it means you stop stealing your brother's clothes.
They don't fit him.
But they're his clothes.
But he doesn't wear them.
Look, we can get you your own clothes. You don't have to wear hand-me-downs.
I really like this better than the one we saw earlier. What do you think?
Honestly, I was really liking the first one, but I think that I'm meant to wear this one.
Yeah. What about shoes?
I think I still have those heels from last year.
The nice taupe ones? Oh, that would be a good line, yeah.
Hair up or down?
I love it down. Or maybe half. We could get you a blowout.
Okay, sounds good.
How's it coming?
Good. I'm done. Let's go. I need more sports bras.
You need more? You already have so many.
They're worn out.
Oh, well, don't you think you probably want something, you know, less, see, these are for sports, and maybe you want something a little more comfortable, something maybe just kind of less.
That's what?
We're actually having a sale on these right now. This might actually be your size. What are you, like a 34B?
I'm small.
Yeah.
Those are actually super comfortable. I have like 4 of them.
Well, what do you think? Maybe it's worth a try?
I'm okay with these. I'll see you at the car.
You know what, maybe I'll get one of those since they're on sale.
It's interesting that you mentioned subtlety as well, because I think it would have been so easy to make the other characters in it mean, aggressive towards it, but to actually show that some people are fighting their own battle whilst trying to understand as well. Yes. I think that was, how much of that was a conscious choice to kind of show that, like we said earlier, well-meaning but misplaced?
Yeah, because I think it's really easy to set other people up as the problem when I think the biggest problem was coming within myself. It was more internal, and I was surrounded by well-meaning people who wanted me to be myself. I mean, I know that I heard a lot of things about being gay or women who wanted to look like boys and how gross and disgusting. I mean, that definitely was, especially in the 90s, I heard that a lot. But the people around me were very loving and kind, and, so, but there was still that little pressure, even with my own mom, she looks back on it and wish she could have been more supportive. Mm-hmm. But she was, trying to encourage me to wear my hair down and put, You know, she even has a picture of me up in her house now with my hair down, and she loves it. She's like, I love this picture of you. It's like, okay, you know, and it's all very well-meaning, and she loves me. So, so I think that actually is more interesting to me, that kind of conflict, when you're dealing with that subtlety, like that kind of...
We did talk about it, though, during production, because the screenplay also was a finalist in the Screencraft short film screenplay competition, which is really cool. And that happened, like, that award was coming in, like, as we were in the early days of production. And part of how that works is they give you feedback from a jury, like, as you go to the next level and the next level. And some of the feedback said you need an antagonist. And this would be a great opportunity to make the girl in the bathroom of the locker room really mean or really uncomfortable with Ashlyn's presentation. And we actually did, like, reach agreement between the two of us, no antagonists. Because we really don't believe in antagonists. And even before, like, when you were talking about parents leading with fear, I think that's true, but I think it's really protection. Like, parents lead with protection.
Fear.
Exactly. It's like fear and protection. It's kind of the same thing, but two different variations of it. But it's that love-based, like, people are trying to protect themselves. People are trying to make themselves and their loved ones safe, right? So we want to look at people nuanced like that. And we didn't think we needed an antagonist, you know?
I think the pressure within is stronger anyway.
Yeah, the subtlety, completely agree. As a parent as well, you know, far be it for me to be political, but in the US right now, you know, how much do you think that education is important? Because, you know, there are things going on externally, legally, that are concerning for the LGBTQ community.
I think what I've learned as I've stepped forward in my life as a parent, but also just as a person, is that when it becomes personal, it's no longer like political, the way that we think of political, and it becomes political differently, as in, like, you need to fight for the right of the person that you know personally who would be negatively affected by the politics that don't treat them as human beings. Do you know what I mean? So it feels like education and representation is actually everything, because what if you don't know somebody who experiences gender dysphoria personally? And many people don't, or they don't know that they do, right? Then maybe a film is the only way you'll tap in, like, with the empathy that you would bring to your own child, you know? And as somebody I have 2 sons, and I understand, like, deep down, you just want them to be safe and well. You want them to be okay in the world. You want them to be okay and happy and joyful. And you know that some of these things are burdensome and heavy. But just because they're burdensome and heavy doesn't mean they're going away. They're part of the human experience. That's how it is to be human. So I think as artists, it's our responsibility. Whoa, I just called us artists. We've only made one movie, but do you know what I mean? But as people who put work into the world that then other people look at and, like, have a resonant, empathetic connection with, I do think it's our responsibility to try to humanize the experiences that might not be personal to everybody, so that maybe politics becomes personal. And then it becomes political in that new way where you're really advocating for somebody who you love, who you know deserves your rights.
Can I add to that? I'm going to add one more thing. I think I love everything you just said, but I just want to add something else that I'm sure I'm going to name drop Alok here. I don't know Alok, but I think Alok is phenomenal. But Alok says that, like, you know, accepting others' gender freedom is really freeing everyone. Like, you know, so it's not just about the kid or somebody that you know who might have gender expression difficulties, or if you are freeing them, you are freeing, because we're all subtly, like, in that cage, really. So, you know, the fear comes from their own inability to be able to express themselves. They fear that they can't. I think most people feel like they can't step outside of a box. So if you allow others to do it, I think it'd be interesting to see what we all do.
Yeah, we are all in the paradigm. Like, you can't escape your culture. So we're all in the gender paradigm. It is interesting. It is compelling to think about that. If you free somebody else from gender, what kind of liberation do you get to be yourself?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I like that.
We also have to mention the humour. I love it. You know,
thank you.
You should have been on set. What are you doing?
Thank you.
The My Fair Lady, you know.
Oh, yeah.
When you have them coming on the stage, and, you know, was it important to just inject a little bit of, and why My Fair Lady?
Oh, interesting. I think, why am I... I'm trying to go back to why I chose that. It was so long ago. There was a reason.
In the movie, it's everything. I mean,
because
it was
all
about being a lady. What is it to be a lady?
That's exactly
Yeah.
it.
It's all performance.
Yeah, it's performance, and so that is why I chose that particular film. But I question that, so that is interesting.
Whitney is so steeped. This is the interesting thing about Whitney. Whitney is so steeped in references. Like Whitney absorbs film and absorbs books and absorbs speakers and podcasts, and like then it becomes part of. Then it becomes part of Whitney's identity, like vernacular. Like so, Whitney puts My Fair Lady in the movie, and I'm like, oh, this is so obvious. Like that's because it's about performative gender, right? Yeah. And what does it mean to be accepted as a lady? And then Whitney's like, I don't know why I put it in, but it's like it's so because it's part of Whitney. And I just think that's your genius, and that's I don't know. Whitney's written our next movie already, and I just watch Whitney's writing process, and of course we talk and brainstorm and plot, etc. But when Whitney writes, they retain all these tools of everything they've absorbed throughout their life.
That's really
and then
sweet.
it just comes in at the right moment to make it really searing and powerful or really funny.
Yeah, and did you want to have that like laugh out loud moment where you've got like
I did.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
It was funny.
I really found myself trying to do it, so I was like,
yeah. Another reference. I have another reference. Phoebe Waller-Bridge says, disarm your audience with comedy and then hit them in the gut with drama, which I think is really good. Yeah. So I love comedy and drama. I think it's a good way to loosen up the audience. And then, and it was interesting because we only had not to go into it, we only had 10 minutes left that day. We almost scrapped the scene entirely. And
you did it.
Yeah, I don't know how we did it. We went over 5 minutes.
We did.
But we just had them come up and and what I told them, I was like, listen, everybody has the lines, and because it was all about around that cup moment or a few moments in the movie. Yeah. But I was like, don't even worry, take the pressure off, because even if you fail, it'll be funny. Yeah. So a lot of those moments that we caught were completely improvised by the kids, which I thought was really kind of fun in the end.
But it was the most rapid fire. Yeah. Whitney's like yelling the line, they're yelling.
Yeah. It's like 20 kids.
We had no time. Yeah. And it was really, but you know what? The vibe on set was so joyful. We had a 6-day shoot, and the whole thing, there was one rough day, and then the next day we brought in a masseuse at lunch because we felt like that day before had been rough. We had tended a house in the San Fernando Valley, which you guys are from Britain, so you don't know. But the San Fernando Valley gets hot in June. And it was maybe 100 and something degrees inside the house with all of our lights too. And so that was a tough one, but the vibe on set, the way that people felt about working with each other and collaborating with each other was so good that when we were coming towards the end of that day and we were like, oh, we're not going to make the montage. And we were like, you know what? We've got good vibes here. I think these kids are going to want to stay and make the montage. And they did. They all wanted to stay. Every single one of them wanted to stay. And all the crew wanted to stay.
And they've just been massaged. They're like, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they
didn't get the massage.
This
is a different day. But yeah, the vibe was massagey.
Yeah. And they stuck around all day.
Yeah,
and so I was like, man, we got to get this. So it ended up being really
and we're
fun.
going to bring some of those kids back for auditioning for our next movie because they really poured in, all our actors. Oh, man.
Before we talk about the award, we have to talk about the ending. I know we're not going to say specifically. Yeah. But the ending is ambiguous. Yes. Right? Yes. It could go either way. It could either be this hugely joyful, amazing, full circle moment, or it could just be an incredibly powerful moment of strength. Yeah. Why did you do it the way you did it?
I think some of my favorite short films do have a little bit of a twist at the end or something unexpected. So I did want to have that in this story. But I think I often think that the short was sort of a reimagining of what things could have been like if I had the support, because at that age, parents are really integral and they're really important. And to have a parent who does support you and pushes you in that direction, in the direction you want to go, is huge. So, ambiguous. I don't know if that answers the question.
I think, can I
please
ride your coattails a little?
Yeah, please.
I think what's interesting is Whitney's parents definitely supported Whitney, but I don't think that they had the exposure or the tools or the knowledge to know that there was an area where they really weren't supporting Whitney. And so I really like when Whitney talks about this film as a reimagining of their youth, because I think when we see it, we believe it. I mean, people say that all the time, right? You have to see it to believe it, right? But who sees it first? Who puts it out there so that we can believe it? But I think that's powerful because when parents do see this, I think they will be able to see, hopefully, like, oh, that was maybe hard for him, but not so scary to have a child who is struggling in this way, right? But the other thing I was going to say is that I think an interesting thing happens when your parents do lack the vocabulary, the exposure, or something like that to support a child who is outside of their box, like who's outside of their world and what they understand. I came out as bisexual to my mom when I was young. It was the most non-issue thing that has ever happened. When I tell people the story, it's a non-thing. And so when my mom started meeting people that I was dating, there was no difference. And so I never internalized any shame. And the same was true when I came out to my dad, which was much later. And he had the same non-reaction. And it was so interesting because it meant that I didn't internalize that experience. I didn't think anything was strange about it. It didn't occur to me. And it's so interesting because I live in the same world that everybody else lived in. Whitney and I were born the same year. We went to neighboring high schools. We lived in neighboring towns, right? And yet, because Whitney's parents, not by any fault of their own, but just because that's the culture that they were in, Whitney's parents lacked the ability to see maybe where they couldn't support Whitney or they couldn't validate Whitney in their identity at that earlier age. And then that creates something different in a child as they're growing up. And they're like, this is either not seen at all, so I'm kind of invisible in this, or the part of it that is seen, which was the homosexual part, is actually not accepted. And then that can bring shame. And that changes the whole course of your life, you know? So we have this interesting thing happening here. I also don't present as any particular non-conforming identity, right? Whitney moves through the world presenting in a non-conforming identity. We have a lot of like parallels in our age and our location and our friendship. And then we have these things that are really different. And so it makes me want to advocate even harder for my experience. I know it's not possible for everybody, but when your parents just go, okay, I don't know, dude.
Yeah.
It's pretty liberating.
Yeah.
So
I would love somebody out there to watch that film and see that moment and be like, I could do that for my child.
Oh,
I could
yeah.
have this. I could have, there is a thing that I can do where I don't have to sit down and have a conversation, but I could really support them in this one thing. Yeah. And that is why the awards, the Tribeca, what was that like?
surprising. Very surprising.
Yeah, I think that was huge because I think to know that the audience did connect with it and they weren't particularly queer. It's not like the audience was like full of queer people. It was like people of all ages, like parents and middle-aged, older, younger. So I think a few people even cried. So to me, that when you're not even, I know, when you're not,
feel free to cry.
Yeah,
if you feel like it.
That to me was like, oh wow, okay. I think I speak for any writer to producer, director who makes anything. You really just want people to relate to it. Mm-hmm. So when you get that moment, it's really nice. You're like, oh, I didn't just do this for myself and nobody So that's
the way they phrased the award too. They said it represented, I think, radically human storytelling. They said like most moving narrative reflecting radically human storytelling. And that really got me because the radically human, that was what we wanted to do, because there's a lot of different things you can do with film. I remember in our first meeting with our DP, we were talking about, we're aspect ratio, what do we want to do? And there are some artsy, cool ways to make a movie. And I like them, actually. And as a photographer, I really like them, right? And that other aspect ratio, that feels homey to me, But we just kept saying, like, would a dad in Missouri feel comfortable watching this on his TV, on a streaming platform, and with his kid? If his kid's like, hey, Dad, I want you to watch this. Is there a boundary? Is there a barrier to him watching it and relating? And so like making something radically human that is like absorbable and then ends up being moving, that's what we tried to do. So it was a great award. It was an honor and a shock. We were in a really cool set of films.
Love that.
Yeah.
How can somebody watch it? How can somebody find it? Someone from the UK sees this interview, they're like, go see it. How?
What a great question. We would also like to know.
I know.
No, we're in our festival circuit.
Yeah, I think right now we're in the festival circuit, but eventually it will be made public. I mean, we're not going to hold it so close to our chest forever. It's just kind of like making the rounds, and then you can see it. I know this isn't going to air before, but Out on Film, you can get a virtual screening ticket.
Yeah.
It's going to be for the public, so you can get that, or you can go if you're at Atlanta, stop, and we're at the closing night of the festival. So that's really cool. But yeah, I think it's going to be a few months before we find a home for it, or there's a bunch of different things we could do with it, but it'll definitely be public at some point. Yeah.
Love that. And you've already mentioned that you are onto another project now. Tell me what's next for you.
We're super, super stoked and excited.
Yeah.
We brainstormed a ton of ideas because as soon as we made one movie, actually I think it was like 3 days into making Leading Man, Whitney called me on February 8th. And I think by February 11th, we were like, oh yeah, we're going to do this forever.
Yeah,
and that's true. And so when we finished Leading Man, we started working on our next project. We had so many ideas. And the one that just hooked is Whitney was actually on a girls' basketball team in high school. Yeah. And it was like an underdog team. With
the worst team in the county. Terrible.
No
when I went in my
gym
freshman
wall.
year, terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Right. No offense to the team, but there were feeder programs going to other schools that had great basketball programs. And this is 1996, okay? Like going into Whitney's senior year, 1996. And this was a very underrated basketball program. And these 5 seniors were left, the 5 starters. And boy, did they want to win. And they ended up taking
we ended up being number 1 in state, like in California. Yeah. But what's interesting is the 5 players are so interesting. So they all have different, well,
one of them's Whitney.
Yeah, one of them is me, right. And actually, it's funny, a little bit of this Leading Man story will be trickled in, just a little bit. It's not going to be about that. But my character doesn't show up because it actually happened. Like the 5 players our senior year were supposed to take a senior year photo for the yearbook. And they thought it'd be really cute if they got all 5 seniors in these prom dresses. I did not want to ever wear it, so I just didn't show up. So I didn't go. So the 4 seniors have their senior picture in these dresses holding basketballs. It was supposed to be this like big deal. And I just didn't show up. And I look back on that moment, I'm like, wow, that's crazy that I couldn't voice what I was feeling, but just was like, no, I can't do that. Like I just, so that'll probably be in the movie.
Show up.
Yeah, but the star of the movie really is the point guard. She ended up going on and playing pro a little bit, and then she's now a coach. But this was a little bit of homophobia in there, racist. Like everyone's so unique. Like it's a very diverse. I hate to use the word diverse, but it's like a diverse cast. Like so it's just I don't know. It's a fun and also. Sorry.
Yes, no, this is important. I know what you're going to say.
I know, and you tell me. It's not that I don't like women's sports movies. I think they have a place, and I have some favorite ones from. I just don't know if they're taken as seriously as the male sports movies when it comes to production, character, everything, and acting, all of it, color, like just across the board, editing, music, all of it. And so, to me, we would like to make a movie that is on par with those films. Like you forget it's a women's basketball or sports movie. It's
just like everything else in life, though. Like it feels this way to be a human. Yeah. So these gender divides, they're not so very real. Yeah. I mean, of course they exist, right? They're in our world, but they're not as sharp and clear as they seem to be in the media. And so the way that women's sports films have traditionally been done, I don't know that it always comes through what it really feels like to be an athlete. And I would then say like a female athlete. It feels like being an athlete, right? That's the same feeling. You work hard, you get dirty, you care about your team, you have dynamics that play out on the court that also play out at home. You have your home life that you're bringing onto the court that changes the way you play that game that day. That's the story we want to tell, that inside story that people have always had the courage to tell about men. Because I guess we think that men playing sports, it's like inherently grippier, right? But now we're learning that that's just really not the case. I mean, the following for the WNBA now is proving to us.
Which is a year ago, we decided to do this. And the fact that like the WNBA like had this, it's like,
the fact that
we're
the
now
first
feeling
WNBA
behind.
game was in 1997, which is when their team.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So when we graduated, it was literally when we graduated in one state, it was like 2 or 3 months before the first WNBA game. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, the timing, and it feels meant to be. We've already interviewed the whole team and the coaches and the reporter from the Orange County Register who wrote all the articles. We have hundreds of articles, pictures, video. Yeah. It's deep. Like, we're really, really excited about it. And it's similar to Leading Man in that it's like, hey, the world has moved forward and we've seen a lot more representation. And like, dang, like I've seen The Swimmers, Naiad. These are beautiful movies. Okay. But there's still more. There's more female-driven content that needs to come out. And I'm just excited that we're going to put it out there.
It's so funny because I can telepathically feel the rest of the Nonchalant team behind me. Like, yes!
Good.
Women's basketball sports, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we're really excited.
So excited. What would you, because you're doing this independently, right? So
Yeah.
like, what would your advice be for people who want to get into what you're doing? Like, how do you get there? How do you get to the point where you have the courage and trust your skills to be like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make something?
Okay, can I say something first? Because I've had a little, like, this has been Whitney's dream to be a filmmaker. And I think it's beautiful. And I feel like I'm now in this like wild, almost fandom support of Whitney's dream. But it turned out to be my dream too. So sometimes when I hear people say like, what would you recommend? I was waiting for like 2 decades, maybe longer, for somebody to say something in answer to that question that would make me go, oh, that's what I need to do. But really what I needed to do is for Whitney to call me to be like, do you want to make a movie? And then for me to realize like in the next few days, this is the most fun I've ever had. It uses all of my skills. We have complementary skill sets. Holy smokes, it's working. And now I'm like, I feel like other than my sons, this is the first baby that I've raised that like, I'm like, yes, I want to raise this baby, you know, because I've tried a ton of other things from activism to photography to poetry to all the things. But this is the first thing where I felt like a click. And it's natural and it's resonant and I have no fear. I'll call anybody, write to anybody, as Whitney knows. And I just feel no obstacle in front of me because I feel like this is what we are meant to do. But until Whitney called me, I wouldn't have known that. So for me, like, it depends on the type of person that you are. Because if you're like a me type of person, you're probably trying things with your whole heart and you're giving them your all. You might even be doing well and might be making a difference in the world and that might feel good, but you know you don't have it yet. And then I would say, from my point of view, it's like, keep doing that, like pour your whole heart into the whole thing, whatever it is that you're doing. But at the same time, be really radically honest with your community because there may be somebody in your world who has like a bridge that they can build towards you. And then suddenly you're living a dream that you never knew you had. And I just feel like before Whitney called me, I thought I was supposed to come up with that myself and I was really trying hard. And I didn't. And now I have a dream. It feels like I think I care about this dream as much as Whitney's cared about it, even though I think Whitney's cared about this and envisioned this since they were like 5. Your turn.
Probably one of the most honest answers I've ever had.
But if I hadn't told Whitney that I was like struggling, because I did tell Whitney.
That's true. A few months later, I was like, oh. But here's the thing that's interesting. So I was editing for a really long time. And I had tried a bunch of times kind of on my own and with other people in the past to do something. I do think finding, but this is so unique. It's beyond anything. Yeah. And I don't know if I would have done it by myself. You know, I wanted to do it. I had a vision for it. I think to tell people, what I would tell people is find at least one person, who will read your stuff, like tell you you're doing a good job, be a team player, be a teammate for you. You know, that would be the first like you can do it, but you just need somebody. I think somebody there to be your cheerleader and support, whether it's a parent or a co-writer or producer. I would also say, for me, because I couldn't have written watch the good stuff, like watch the classics, watch the stuff that does really well and analyze it, like analyze every scene. You know, I know it's not as hard as you think. Just like watch why this works and write something that people, when they read it, they're like, oh, wow, yeah. And then just go make it because you'll learn so much by making it, even on an iPhone, you know?
People say that though. I've heard that so many times, like, go make it on an iPhone. And then what I think is I would never like it if it was made on an iPhone. Like I need to have the proper camera and then the lights and then that's why I'm a producer, right? That's what like drives my production side is like, I really want it to look the way it looks in my mind.
Sure.
But I would say to that like, to piggyback on what you just said, if you can get the courage to make it, but you feel like it needs to be on a proper camera or not proper, because I'm sure some iPhone stuff is drop dead gorgeous, you know? But I just mean, if you feel strongly that it needs to be done a certain way, make calls and ask and have, if you can, be slightly fearless in saying like, hey, I'm doing a thing. Are you interested? Mm-hmm. We did that with actors. We did that with our casting director. Mm-hmm. We worked with people in this movie we had no business working with. People who were way more experienced and we were way below their pay grade. And they somehow said, I believe in your story. I'll do it with you. Oh. But first we had to ask them, you know, and then we actually, by some miracle, ended up with an even better camera than the one that we agreed to rent. And that was just a miracle. But if we hadn't already been working with an awesome rental house, we have been the ones that they called to say, hey, we have an extra Ari, like, do you want it?
See, this is why
You
we're
know?
a good team. She asks. She will
do.
ask. She will ask. I'm like, no, we can't bother them. No. And then she'll just pick up the phone and I'm like, okay, all right. You know, we're
But
a
I
good
think
team.
it's fun. I want you to
agree.
ask me too. Like,
Yeah, I agree.
I think I always say if I was a chef and like I needed to know like the best pan, I would, if I knew a Michelin star chef, I would ask that person.
Yeah.
You know, so I just feel that way about this.
It's great. I think it's, yeah.
Yeah, we're a good team. We have like,
Team is a good.
and for the past 10 years, we've both been developing complementary skill sets. Whitney's been an editor. I've been a photographer. I used to be an actress back in the deep past, and Whitney acted back in their own way, like on camcorder, home camcorder movies. But when you bring those skill sets together, suddenly you have a flourishing, you're more when you're together. And I think that's what you're also saying too about like find yourself a teammate who can make you more.
Support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit fateful, isn't it? You know, it's like fate. You've kind of, it's all come together at the right time.
Yeah.
I do hope you go forward and make more radically human content.
Thank
I'm
you.
excited to see all of it.
Thank you.
That's everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cold like 0 degrees. I'm out the cage, gotta let out the beast. Revolutionary, gotta let out the streets. Locked in a cage, I'ma let out the. Wake up, get out the sheets. We came